My name is Carl Schaefer, as Mark said. I'm president of the Pennsylvania Farm Bureau. If I could, I'd just like to highlight a couple points, and then I'd be glad to take questions because I really want to know what you're thinking about. First, let me start at the state level and over this past year. Pennsylvania farmers really had some pretty good accomplishments at the state legislature this year. First, let me say a historic passage of the state inheritance tax exemption for Pennsylvania farm families is really key to the future of not only agriculture, but the future for the consumers of having a reliable food supply moving on into the year 2050, when everyone is anticipating the world population going to be double. So the key to providing a future for agriculture through state inheritance tax relief, relieving that burden to a younger member who is starting out, the tax burden, and relieving that stress financially on them is vital to do. Also, along those same regards, we have an exemption for, it was kind of a unique situation where most other small businesses already had an exemption in Pennsylvania, and that's the relief of having to pay the realty transfer tax on assets that weren't transferred to somebody. The name was just being changed. In other words, when a son or daughter would want to come to the farm, and maybe that would go from a single proprietorship to an LLC, just by changing the name to an LLC, they were subject to realty transfer tax of 2%. Well, that burden, every other small business in Pennsylvania was exempt from that except agriculture. So along with the inheritance tax being exempted, the realty transfer tax was also being exempted. One other victory we considered is our vehicle codes that we have been living under to move equipment were written in the mid-70s. Well, if anyone can think back how things were in the mid-70s compared to where they are today, the whole agricultural dynamics had changed dramatically. Equipment has changed dramatically to larger, different types, different tillage practices, no-till practices, and in order to keep up with those, being able to move those implements of husbandry on roads, the vehicle codes needed to be changed. It needed to be upgraded to today's times, and that was also accomplished. So they were some pretty significant victories. As far as the state inheritance tax, let me tell you a quick story. We have one employee that's worked for Farm Bureau for 30 years. And I asked him, I said, how long have we been working on this state inheritance tax exemption? And he said, I don't know, but it was a problem when I came here to work. So it's been a long time, but as I said, a lot of good things take a long time. We also have some challenges ahead of us. At the national level, agriculture is in dire need of the passage of new farm bill, especially if you consider for our dairy farmers, part of the last farm bill was MILC payment protection. We need a new farm bill that will provide risk management tools for our dairy to keep on thriving, as we're the 4th and 5th number dairy state in the nation. So we need this farm bill to be passed so we can have those safety nets, especially for our dairy farmers. Another thing that we're very, very concerned about, along with a lot of other people, I'm sure you've heard of a phrase called the fiscal cliff. This could impact farm families dramatically. I talked to you about the impact of state tax. If there isn't something done to address the federal estate tax, the tax rate will go to a whopping 55%, and the exemption will go from a currently $5 million exemption down to a $1 million exemption. Now, under today's environment, with the price of land, the net value of land and assets like that, really a $1 million isn't a lot of land on a farm today. So it's not going to only impact larger farmers, it's going to impact a lot of smaller farmers, and pretty dramatically if that 55% tax rate stays in there. Another one of the important things is going to be the increase in capital gains tax. That's going to jump up if something isn't done, and that's on sale of cattle, can be on timber sales. It'll affect any kind of sales like that that falls in with our farmers. Just quickly, I want to share something that I recently came back from a trade trip for American Farm Bureau. I was in St. Louis touring locks and dams on the Mississippi River. I was in New Orleans and Baton Rouge touring the ports, and I was down in Panama to tour the new canal. In 2014, when the new Panama Canal opens up, the Panamanic ships that are going to be able to go through that canal are going to be a lot larger than the ones that can go through today. So you say, how is that going to affect us? In the United States, there are only 6 ports in all of the United States that can accept a new Panamanic ship in 2014. We have to export about 30% of what we produce. We have to keep a global competitiveness edge on us. Let me give you an example. Our biggest competitor for soybeans is Brazil. Brazil can, without a doubt, produce soybeans a lot cheaper than we can. There's less regulation, less cost to produce them. Where our competitive advantage is, we can ship soybeans to Asia a lot cheaper than Brazil can. If we don't address our marine infrastructure, get the draft for like the New Orleans port to 50 foot instead of 45 to accept the larger ships, I don't want to make a pun, but Brazil is going to be eating our lunch as far as trade competitiveness. So this is something that the United States really needs to address. The sad part about it, there are harbor fees charged in every harbor and port in the United States. The harbor fees go into the general fund of the U.S. Treasury. Less than half that money comes back to fix infrastructure. The rest is used to balance budgets. So we need to make sure our legislators are aware of this. We cannot let other countries take over as the chief exporter of our agricultural products. It's vital. Looking back in review, you know, the Midwest United States suffered a terrible, devastating drought. As a result of that, commodity prices have skyrocketed. Now, it's the old story. Sometimes you get the bear, sometimes the bear gets you. If you're someone that's growing commodities and selling them, you're doing pretty good. If you're someone growing livestock and having to buy commodities as feed costs, you're not doing so well. And that's what we've seen over the years, especially the beginning of the year. Our dairy farmers' prices have plummeted while feed costs have skyrocketed. Recently, dairy prices are coming back, but feed costs are still extremely high. So it's something we really need to be aware of. Like I said, it's good for one side, but kind of rough on the